Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Monday and I'm going to be taking you guys through this Flutter REST API tutorial. So this is what we are going to be creating at the end of this tutorial. We are going to be making requests from our Flutter app to this JSON API, to this JSON server. So I found out on YouTube and I found out that in process of learning Flutter that REST API is very important. When I was learning, I had a lot of challenges, the approach that people use in teaching, and I came out with a very simple approach that it will be beginner friendly for everyone, that both the people that are just the newbies that are just learning Flutter for the first time. So I'm very sorry that I didn't start from the scratch, like teaching you guys how to download and install Flutter on your system, but I just want to start from this point. In the future, I'll come back and do such video, but I know that on YouTube there are many videos that concentrate on that can teach you how to install Flutter on your system. So please bear with me. Let's get started. So as you can see, this is what we're about to create. We want to make requests to the backend using Flutter. So we're going to be creating a new project in Android Studio. Please let me ensure I'm recording. Okay. Well, we are using a Flutter version 3. I want to let you know that the way you write code in version 2, there are a lot of changes between version 2 and version 3. So we are going to be using version 3 in this video. So you click next. I think I'm making a mistake. Please bear with me. My studio is having little, maybe let me just cancel this one and create another one again. So I'll click on new Flutter projects. Next, I'll call it Flutter REST API tutorial. Flutter REST API tutorial. Let me just put this to differentiate some file on my system. So I'll click on finish. Let me ensure it's version 3 because I have other version on my system. Then I'll click on finish. So I'm going to be using HTTP. I'm not going to be using DO, but HTTP. So let me first of all run this project so that we'll be doing it will be using the hot reloaded. We don't need to be running it over and over again. So let's wait for it to run. While our project is building, we're going to have some packages. We are going to be having about 2 packages. We'll have the first, we'll create first package or directory. This one will call services. So this one will contain the API requests. So create another package and we'll call this one model, because we are going to be having at least 3 models. We are going to, if you check from the API, you see that we have the main API, and we have, which is the main model, and we have the address. Then after the address, what again? We have company. So the first one will be the main model, while the second one will be the address model. The third one will be the company model. So we're going to, let's start creating it while we are waiting for our project to build. Let me just wait a while. My studio is somehow slow. So I will create that. I'll call it, which is the main model. Then I'll create another one. But before I create all these things, let me show you something so that it will be very easy for us. You'll be able to understand what I'm doing. So I'm going to copy the whole of this API here, the whole of this JSON. Let me just highlight all of them and copy it. Then I'll come to this JSON to Pojo. Now if you check here, I'll click on JSON to that. So I'll paste it here. So if you look at it now, I have all the models here. This is the root model, which I name it as users. This is the root model. Then the other models are company and address. Let me start with address. For the address, I don't need this geo location. I don't need it. I just need only the street, the city, and the zip code. So I'll create an address model. Please, if you don't understand, comment below. So I'll create the address model. I'll create as class address. Then I'll paste it. So you can see that our Flutter app has already been built and installed on our emulator. So I have these are the information that I need for the address. Now the next model is company. Please, I will explain better what I'm doing if you don't understand. So for the company, I need name, catchphrase, and BS. While for the user, is a root model. So let me explain what I'm doing here before I proceed further. So we have this JSON server here, all our JSON file that we want to make request to. So the main one, which is the root model, you can name it as anything you like. So if you check from our link here, is for users, so that's why I decided to name it as user, but you can decide to name it anything you like. So if you check here, we have address and we have company, and these are sub models. So because they are sub models, I need to create their own separate model. So this kind of JSON is like a multiple JSON. It's not like a straight one that if you just make request to this point, you can just get everything from here. This one that has its own information, you need to create its own model, then link it to the main user's model. Even for the company model, you need to create his own model and link along with the user's model. That's why I decided to create address model and the company model. So what is here is that I will start from the sub model before I go to the main user's model. So I will start from address model. Now the address model, I need streets. I'm getting these things according to what is in the JSON server. So the address model, I need street, suit, city, and zip code. I don't want this one. I don't want to make it to be too much advanced again, because if I decide to go with this geo, I need to create another model that will be under this address model, but I don't want to do that. So I will forget about this geo model. Then for this address model, I need street, suit, city, and zip code. So what I will do is that, according to the way Flutter is, when you create a model, you create a constructor. After creating a constructor, you create a factory. So I will now create my constructor. So if you are using Android Studio, you just right click, just click anywhere around here and right click your mouse, then go to generate constructor, then highlight all of them. But if you are not using Android Studio, maybe you are using Visual Studio, you can decide to create it yourself. So I want to make everything here to be required, so I will remove this and paste it in a curly brace. Then I will just touch it on it because it's showing error, and add the require word. So now I've created variables for the address and I've created a constructor. Now I need to create a factory. I need to create a factory method. So I will write factory address dot from JSON Now, what I will do is that I will write string. The reason why I'm using string and dynamic, I will explain. So I will say I will use a map which will contain a string and a dynamic. Then I will name this variable as JSON data. So the reason why I'm putting string here is because this address has a string of this. All these objects here are strings. You can see the way they are. They are strings of objects, not an array. So that's why I'm using string. So I will now return the address. So this is how factory is being created. So what I will do is that everything that I'm putting here is that the way I will do it is that I will set this JSON data and set the street in it. So the same word that is here should be the same thing that is here from the JSON. So the street here should match the same street name here. So I will now also do likewise for the rest of them, like the suit, city and zip code. I'll say JSON data, put it in an array. Then zip code. So I will close it. So at this point we are done with the streets. We are done creating the model for the street. So the next model will be the company model. The company model has name, catchphrase and BS. So I will remove this null check. So the next thing I will do is that I will create a constructor. I'll create a constructor. I'll make it to be required. If you are not using Android Studio, you should be able to do this thing manually. So the next thing will be the factory. I'll say company dot from JSON, then give it a map. It also has a strings of objects. Then I'll also set the dynamic and call it JSON data. Then I'm going to return it. I'm going to return the company. So remember the same thing that I did in the other side, that is what I will do this side too. The way I handle the address, that's the way I will handle the company. So it is done. Now these are our sub model which are under the main users model. So for us to be able to complete our users model, we need to bring in the address and the company. That's why I decided to handle the address and the company first before coming to the main users model. So this users model, I decided to name it users. I just decided to name it users as I like. So I'll just touch on it and import the user, the company and the users, so that it will be able to recognize it from their own model. So the next thing I will do here is that I will create a constructor for the users model also. I will also make it required. So the next thing is to create the factory. So I'll say user dot from JSON map, and is a string also with a dynamic. I also call it a JSON data. Then I'll return it. So if you are very familiar with how to create this thing, you can just fast forward the video and just create them by yourself, because all these ones are something that is not that difficult to do, but it's very, very important. But remember that when making an API request in Flutter, you need three things. You need a model, and the model requires the variables that are needed from the JSON server, and the constructor and the factory method. So these are the three things that is needed in a model. So the next thing I will do is that I will also do the same thing that I did in other sub models. Sorry. I might be slow. If I'm slow, please fast forward the video. The most important thing is that I want you to understand what I'm doing here. I don't want to create a video that I will not be talking and explaining what I'm doing. I just want a video that as I'm teaching, I'm also explaining what I'm doing, so that if there's any place you don't understand, you can also ask me question in the comments below. Please, I know that you might be feeling that I'm making mistakes somewhere. I know what I'm doing, I will correct it. So here is a place that you might feel that I'm making mistake, which is the address and the company. So concerning the address and the company, this is the way we'll do it. We'll remove this JSON data address. I will now say address dot from JSON. Then we'll now paste this one here. We'll now paste it inside, because these are sub models. So we need to get their info. We need to get their variable from their main model. So also for company, that is what I will do the same thing. So company from JSON, then I'll paste it also. So let me just remove this address here and bring it to the company also, so that it should be well arranged. So you can also right click on your Android Studio and click on format with that, so that it will be well formatted. I'll come to this side to right click, format code with that, format with that, so that your code will be well arranged. So we are done with the model. The next thing we are going to do now is to create our API service. So you must listen attentively while I'm creating all these things. This API service is very, very important. So I want to make it very easy. I've watched a lot of video on YouTube and I've seen the way they are creating REST API. Some of them are really confusing things. They are really making little things to be very complicated in such a way that something that's supposed to be done in a very simple way, you will now be thinking that it's very difficult. So I'm going to make it very simple. So watch. So I'll create my dat API. I'll create a dat file which is for my API request, and it will be inside the service model. So I'll call it API call. API call.dat. But before I make this API request, I need to bring in a dependency, which is the HTTP dependency. So let's go to the browser. You just search for Flutter HTTP, and it will bring you to this website. This is a pub.dev. Then click on the install. For me, I like installing it on the terminal, so I'll just copy this code with Flutter. I'll come to my terminal and paste it. You can use your Visual Studio Code also to do likewise. So I will I'll just paste it and click my enter button, so it will install. So after installing, the next thing I'll do, I'll come to my pubspec.yaml file, and I will run my pub get. So you can see it's already here. So I'll close it. So now we have access to the HTTP request. We can now use the HTTP in our app. So what we are going to do is that we are going to import the dependency. We import http.dat as HTTP. So for me to make an HTTP request, I need to use feature. So I'll say feature. Now this feature will be as a list. Why is it a list? Let me show you why I'm using lists. If you check from our JSON, you see that is an array which has a list of datas. You can see an array containing a list of JSON response. So that's why I'm using lists. So I'll say feature list. I'll call the method get users. I'll set it as a method, then I'll use async. So I need the URL, so I'll set it as a var. Sorry about that. I'll set it as a var. URL is equal to, so let me get the URL. I'll copy the URL and paste it here. So I have access to the URL. Please don't mind about this error. It's just letting me to know that I need to return it. I need to return this. So let's continue. So I will set a final response. I'll set it that is equal to await. By using sync await, I'll say await http dot get. Remember that we are making a get request. We're not making a post or patch or put request. It's a get request because we are getting all the response from the JSON server. So we say final response equal to await http dot get. So our URL need to be in this http dot get, but before then we need to convert it. If you just put the URL here, look at the error is going to show you. You can see that it's going to show you error that type string cannot be assigned to parameter of URI. So we need to convert it to a URI. So we set URI dot pass. So now we can now put our URL. So this our URL here is now being inserted here. So it has been converted to a URI. So after being converted to a URI, we can now check if the response is successful. If the response is equal to 200, if it is okay, we can now make query the response from the JSON. So we say if response dot status code is equal to 200, then the next thing, remember that it's a list of JSON objects in a list. So I will say return JSON decode. I need to decode the response dot body else return an empty array. So as simple as that. So we have make requests to the JSON server. So the next thing, we are done with all our model, and we are done with our API call. We have successfully connected it to the JSON API as a list. So now we need to work on our main.dat to bring to make all our data to be displayed to our users. So for that reason, now we are going to design our layout, but there is no much design to do here because we are after just learning about how to make HTTP requests, to make an API request. So what I'm going to do here is that normally I like deleting all these things. So I'll delete all the rest. I'll delete this class. I'll create mine. I'm going to create it as a stateful widget. Why am I creating it as a stateful widget? Because it's going to contain a function. There will be changes. So at this point, if you check let's rerun it. For now, nothing happened. So it's just the placeholder. So let's create a scaffold. So we are going to create an app bar which is going to have title. The title, will call it Flutter API tutorial. Flutter API tutorial. Let's see the way it is. Okay, I like to make the background to be black. Then I will set the title to be center. And I will remove the debug banner. So it has been removed. So let me come down to the body. So for me to get all my response in the body, I need to use a feature method, feature builder. So the feature builder is going to be set to a list because we are making requests to a list of objects. So a feature builder is supposed to have a feature, and the feature will be the method will be the method of our API request, which is get users. That is this method that is here. That is what we set to the feature. So the next thing we are going to, it's going to have a builder, and a builder is going to have a context and a snapshot. This snapshot is just like an index. And we set, we are going to return something. So we are going to say if snapshot dot has, sorry, not has error. If snapshot has data, then what do we want it to do? If snapshot has data, we are going to return a list view builder dot builder. So the list view builder is going to have, the builder is going to have a context and an index. Context and index. And it's going to return its own data too. But before it returns its own data, it's going to have an item count. So the item count is going to be snapshot dot data dot length, and we are going to put our null check. So inside this list view item builder, we are going to bring in our user model. We set user is equal to user dot from JSON. Inside this from JSON, we say snapshot dot data and index. Then we'll give it, we set our null check. So at this point now, this model and the model of the object of this model has this model information gotten from the model. So from this user's model, we are going to have access to all this information here, which is being gotten from our JSON server. So what we are going to do is that now we have gotten all the information. All the information we need has been stored in this user's model, which is gotten from the JSON server. So from now we can now get all the information and display to the users. So we cannot just display information like that. We need to arrange it in order. So for us to arrange it, we are going to return a container. So we return a container. How are we going to design this container? We are going to set padding. Edging set dot all. We set it as 5. A container need to have a child. Let's set it as 10. A container need to have a child, and the child we are going to use a column. So the column we have children, and the children will now have all the text. You know that if you check from the JSON server, from the JSON API, we have all this information, so we'll display them in text. we display them in text. So we set text user dot, you can see all the information we need, name. Then the next thing, we need to use a size box to shift it away from the rest of them. So let me just copy and paste for all of them. So the next one we need is after name, it is email. After email is what? We need address. So the address now is a sub model of this user. So say address. Now what do we need from this address? We need the street name. Now also, what we are going to do, we are going to set it, we separate it so that we can get other information again. So another thing we need user dot address. After street we need suits. Dots. After suit we need city. After city we are getting all these things from the address. We need zip code. So if you check here, let's see what our studio is suggesting. So we should replace it with interpolation. So you can see now it has been replaced with interpolation. So after the address information, which other thing do we need? We need a phone. After phone, which other thing do we need? User dots. We need user's website. After website, what do we need again? We need user's company. Company has its own model. Company name. After company name, we need a user.company.catchphrase. So I think these are the things we need from the user. So if you check, we are still having error. So if you check here now, we have an if statement. You say if snapshot has data, get all the information as in a list view. So we'll now say else. If there is an error, we'll now say else. If snapshot dot has error, what do? We now return a text to show the error even to the user. Although this is for practice, if it is a production application, you don't show such error to user, you just show unexpected error or something went wrong. So here now, I just want us to show an error. So we say snapshot dot error. So it's not yet done. After that, this builder, this builder, this future build need to return another thing again. So what do we return? Let's see if it is here that we need to return something. We need to return something. So we just return a progress dialog, a progress indicator. If you don't return something, there will be error. So I will return a circular progress indicator. That's all. So let's run our app and see what we have. So our app is, things are not well arranged, though the things has been the data has been displayed, but it's not well arranged. So let me see what to do. Okay, this column I will set cross axis alignment as stats. So you can see it's getting better. So let me put this column in a card. Let me set a margin, edge set dot all. I'll set it as 5. So you can see things are getting better. So the next thing is that I need to style the name so that the name should be different from others. So the style, I will set font weight, dot bold. Font size dot 22. Then color, I will set it as black. Let's see how it's going to be. So you can see that it's getting better. It's better now. So let's give the email a different color. So you can see that it's now better. It's now like the way it is, the way I showed you from the beginning. So at this point, we have successfully created a REST API. We have successfully make request to a JSON REST API. So this is how it is done in Flutter. Let me just give you a summary of what I did. The first thing I did is I create a package name model, a package name service. So now I have this JSON API which contain list of information. You see here it has ID, name, username, email, address, phone, website, and company. But if you check this address has a sub, it has its own information. So because of that, after creating my main model, which I name it as users, I now decide to create another model for address, so that I will get all the information under address. And I created another model for company, so that I can get all the information for company. So that is what I did. So I now created an API. I created a package name service and create an API. I got the API URL, then set the response to HTTP GET and convert it to URI. Then if the response is okay, which is 200, I return the response. I decode it, return it in the body, and decode it. Now I'm doing this thing as a list of feature method called get users. Then if there is no response, then return an empty list of objects. So after then I came to the main.dat and create a feature builder as a list, then create a feature and bring in the API method, which is this get users, set it to the feature, then create a builder which has a context and a snapshot. And I'll check if snapshot has data, return the data in list view builder. And list view builder has the snapshot data. We now have item count, which will loop through the list of data from the JSON. Then the list builder also have item builder, which has a context and an index. So I bring in the user's main model and I set it to the snapshot index, which is attached to this user variable. So from this user variable, I can get all the information from the model, which is gotten from the API, and display it to the users. So this is what we just did. So thank you for checking out. If you still have anything that you don't understand, that is still confusing, please comment below. I will be there to answer, to clear your doubts. I'll see you some other time. Please subscribe, like the video, and share with your friends. Thank you.